What's up guys, it's Alex the Magician here, back for another video in the Heroes 3 matchups series. And in this one, we are going to be discussing another interesting matchup, and this is going to be Conflux versus Tower. So the showdown of spellcasters. This is going to be a pretty interesting one, I think, and it also has some potential for some interesting picks and kind of counterplays. And overall, this just feels like an intriguing matchup because, you know, the strength of both of these is going to be usually spellcasting, or, in a lot of cases, it will be spellcasting. So let's just go ahead and get into this. I will try to not talk as much about Conflux as we've already talked about it in the previous video. So if you guys want to check that out, the Conflux versus Rampart matchup, the hero picks are going to be pretty much the same for Conflux. So, I'll just briefly mention them and briefly mention what makes them strong, but not really go into as much detail. If you guys want to hear more detail about that, check out the previous video, the Rampart versus Conflux one. All right, and once again, so what we're going to be going for here is we're going to be discussing the trade, then we're going to be discussing the hero picks for both towns, and then we're going to be discussing the strategy for both towns that they can utilize against the other particular town. So, as far as the trade goes, right? I would say, well, as always, if you are going for Conflux, you're likely going to be paying a lot of gold for it. And, this is going to be true with pretty much every matchup except for versus Necro and versus something like Dungeon. You probably won't be paying as much. Versus Necro, you probably will actually start at a gold advantage since Necro actually is stronger than Conflux, or at least most people think it is. So, in this matchup, I would say playing Conflux, again, as I've mentioned in the previous video, you want to trade based on your level of comfort. Like I mentioned, there was a game in the Jebus Cup where Gamungalus won the trade against Bishop, and it was Tower versus Conflux, and he actually ended up picking Tower at like minus 5k gold, and he ended up winning because he got lucky, and Bishop ended up having a Magic Elementals break in the game in the map that they finally ended up keeping. So, but in most cases, people will value Conflux more than Tower. But of course, if you don't know how to use Luna, if you're not that good with Conflux, you would probably pay less for it. I personally, if I want to play Conflux here, I do like both of these towns. I could go either way, actually. But if I do want to play Conflux, I would be okay paying maybe like 6k, something like that. And then, maybe 1k for the color. I would not be too upset selling red here as well, so that I could start at maybe like 5k or something like that. And I'll mention why, because Tower actually kind of likes being blue in this matchup and a lot of other matchups as well. So strategy for trading as Conflux, usually, maybe 5k, maybe 6k for the town, maybe 1k for the color if you want to actually play Conflux. Now, as far as Tower goes, you want to try to get the opponent to pay as much as possible, right? And you want to try to put your opponent at a disadvantage. So you're both going to be kind of at a race against time. And, Conflux, the thing that Luna gives you is insane tempo, right? And in a lot of cases, people will be expecting you to break early. Tower can, under the right conditions, also break early. However, Luna can still do it faster. So anything you can do to slow down Conflux is going to be a good thing. So if you can get Conflux to pay, like, let's say 6k for the town, and then like 1k, maybe even a little bit higher for the color, you could actually give away the color a little bit cheaply, because as Tower, it's not so bad to be blue, because you get to wait until the opponent says, whether he wants to keep the map or not before you actually decide whether or not you want to keep the map, and that gives you more opportunity to choose the map that you like. And Tower kind of needs to high roll in a lot of matchups, and in this matchup especially. So if you're trading for Tower, that's kind of what I would go for. Of course, if you don't want to get stuck playing Conflux, if you don't like Conflux and you know you want to pick Tower, then, you know, try to sell Conflux probably a little bit cheaper, like maybe 5K, maybe even a little bit less than that. And, you know, if you expect your opponent to actually pick Conflux, right, let him pick Conflux, and then you start as Tower with plus gold. Tower definitely wants to start with plus gold in many matchups, and in this matchup especially, I would say, because for one, Tower needs gold for the genies, right? Since they've added genies to Jebus Cross, Tower has become a lot better. It used to be bottom tier, now it's about mid tier. But the thing about the genies, the magic lamps, you actually have to recruit the genies, so you actually have to pay for them, and you do need a lot of gold for that. So Tower, starting as poor Tower kind of sucks. So if you can help it, of course, you want to get you know, a decent amount of gold starting, right? So now let's talk about the hero picks. All right, so the Conflux hero picks, again, I'm probably, you know, just going to really quickly mention this. If you want to go for a might hero, probably somebody like Monair. You know, it's a decent pick, but I personally do not suggest it. And in this matchup, I don't suggest it. I don't think it's the best for tempo. Honestly, you know, I'm really just throwing this out there for the sake of argument. If you know, people really don't like playing spellcasters, well, it is a viable pick. But the problem is that you're going to have weak army in the early game, and it's going to be tough to get going and snowball, you know, pickets or hives or conses or whatever objects you have. So I personally am against picking a might hero, and in this matchup as well. All right, the other two would be Grindin and Luna. So Grindin, not a bad pick. He has Earth Magic and Slow starting, so you can get Mass Slow quite early, and even though it was nerfed, it's still pretty OP. It can allow you to do some crazy stuff like, you know, farm pickets really easily, conses, etc. So it can allow for some good early game tempo for people who do not like Luna cheesing, and they prefer Grindin cheesing instead, you know, abusing Mass Slow instead of abusing the firewall with a kind of more standard gameplay. Well, Grindin could be a viable pick for you. But I personally still think Luna is the best pick. I think that she is the best for tempo. She's the biggest advantage for Conflux, really. There are things that can slow her down, like fire-resistant or magic-resistant breaks. However, you can still get a lot of value out of her by farming the map really quickly. I mean, why use somebody like Grindin or Monair, where you actually have to rely on army, where you can get Luna, just get her some experience and spell power, and you can farm a maxi picket with just 6 spell power and advanced fire magic, or 3 spell power and expert fire magic. So, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. All right. So that's it for the Conflux picks. Now, the Tower picks are actually pretty interesting. Oh yeah, and as far as the starting bonus for Conflux, well, usually you are going to be starting gold with a gold bonus, because usually you will be paying a lot for it, so pretty standard to start with a gold bonus. All right, now as far as Tower goes, Tower actually has a lot of viable picks. You can pretty much start with any hero, except I would say for Pick a Dream, because Pick a Dream doesn't bring you gremlins, and usually you rely on gremlins in the early game, right? So Solmir is a standard pick. He's got his Chain Lightning, and that's my preferred pick for Tower in most cases. You also have Thane and you have Iona, who are genie specialists with the genie, you know, the magic lamps. They become viable because they increase the speed of genies and their stats. So that actually on snow gives you speed 13. So that means you get first move in hives, etc. So that can be helpful. Neela is a decent pick. She's an armor specialist, so even though she's an alchemist and she's not going to have the best stat progression, still can be very useful. Josephine starts with 2 stacks of golems and also starts with haste. Can definitely be a viable pick. Some people prefer to pick her. You can actually, with building golems on day 1, you can actually take a size 3 hive with tower on day 1 with Josephine's golems and the golems from from your town, and if you use a better hero, I would say like somebody, maybe a Beastmaster, maybe a Overlord, somebody with like 2/2 stats or a good defense or offense skill or armor skill, a little bit better than using Josephine. Yeah, you can take a size 3 hive on day 1, so viable start. And the one that I actually kind of like here, and that is because you're facing Luna, unique to this particular matchup, is Fafnir. And that is because he starts with interference. Now, not going to be the greatest for the early game. Doesn't necessarily give you the advantage of like Solmir's Chain Lightning or Josephine's Golems or, Neela's Armor or Thane and Iona's Genie specialty. However, with the interference, you can kind of counter Luna a little bit. It's not as good as, of course, having Giselle, the interference specialist. However, with expert interference and all the interference artifacts, you still lower the opponent's spell power by 75%, which is very significant if you can find all of that. So I personally would lean either towards picking Fafnir in this matchup or Solmir, right? The Thane, Iona picks, some people prefer them, I don't. And Josephine, in my opinion, picking Josephine, the biggest reason is to go for hives. And I think that going for hives as tower is not the greatest idea because in a lot of cases, you're going to be suffering that terrain penalties. So I would say you're kind of limiting yourself from the start by picking Josephine, right? Neela, I do kind of like, but, I usually lean, I do like the armor specialist, but I usually lean towards a Solmir pick just because of his Chain Lightning. I do like his Chain Lightning, and the thing is, in this matchup and any other matchup, so imagine that neither you nor your opponent find any good magic in the center, right? The desert is really poor or whatever. Well, you are still going to have Chain Lightning as Solmir, which already is a tool that you can utilize that gives you an advantage in fights, on the map, fights against the break, fights in the center, and the final fight as well. So with all other things being equal and you not finding and your opponent not finding any good magic in the center or, in their biome, then that Chain Lightning that Solmir brings can be really useful. And it can also be really, really useful in the early game, like doing your first lamp if it's guarded by something like Marksman or Grand Elves or something like that. Fighting some kind of a ranged guard where you would lose a lot of your gremlin stack normally, but you just go in with Solmir with a speed advantage and use Chain Lightning, and then it's easy GG. Or I mean, not GG, but easy game. So this is actually my preferred pick. But like I said, Fafnir, I can see him being viable, so I would actually say that that's a close second against Luna. And the strategies with Tower would differ a little bit whether you're going to be utilizing Solmir or Fafnir, right? Or any other hero for that matter. With Solmir, or most others, like if you pick Thane, Iona, Josephine, you're going to be trying to go for high tempo, right? And for the high tempo, you're going to need to farm, try to find lamps and try to farm those and try to get as strong as possible, as quickly as possible, get in the center, try to outspeed and outperform your opponent. Right? If you pick Fafnir, I would say that will favor a more later game, right? So that you have a chance to level your interference, so you have a chance to actually find interference artifacts, and maybe in this case you even go for a biome game if you have some utopias, like if you have some cloud temples, you could try to go for titans even, right? And then try to fight a little bit later, but be strong when you do that and fight with interference, right? Okay, so now let's get into the strategy with both of these towns. All right, really quickly, I just wanted to add that I'm not going to be going into incredible detail as far as the overviews and the strategies with the towns go, just to not make this video way too long. So if you guys are interested in checking those out, I do have more detailed overviews for both Conflux and Tower, and I also have demonstrations of the week 1 biome game playthroughs with them as well. So I'll leave the links in the video description below. You guys can check those out if you're interested. All right, so as far as the Conflux Luna gameplay goes, I would say that you're going to be going for a standard textbook Luna game. It's not like when you're trying to counter Giselle or whoever, you know, are not necessarily going to be relying as much on army, right? You're going to be trying to rely on high tempo. And what you're going to need is, of course, at first, you're going to need to farm, ruins and like black towers and whatever you have, like maybe dwarven treasuries, to try to get gold, right? You got to get as many heroes as possible out as quickly as possible, scout as much as possible, and then you're going to be looking for a good break. So something like the Ghost Dragons is not a good break. So I would say here, you're not necessarily relying as much on army rather than having a favorable break that Luna can burn early. And you try to farm as much as possible in terms of army objects as quickly as possible. But if you have to skip some objects in favor of breaking a little bit earlier, then I would say do that and try to rely on getting more done in the center quickly, like more quickly than your opponent, and get stronger. You know, find magic, find pickets, find army in the center, etc. And then when your opponent comes in after he did the break, and likely he's going to be low on mana, you meet him with something like the Air Tome or the Spellbinder's Hat, and enough army to actually kill him with magic and or army or some combination of the two. So really quickly, let's try to look for a map that I would say would be favorable for Luna in this case. All right. So something like this, well, if the road wasn't bad, of course you wouldn't really scout the break on 111. But something like this looks pretty good, right? You have an easy lunable break. You have a cons before the break. You have hives over here that you can easily farm and quickly. You have a picket over here. And looks like we have boxes. We also have, some decent artifacts laying around. So I would say a map like this is not too bad. The worst thing about this is that the road is kind of far from the break. So if you can help it, like if this break was, for example, here, then this would be probably perfect, right? But this map does have a lot of pickets. It does have a lot of hives. So what you would want to do is you would want to get experience with Luna as quickly as possible. Like probably send her this way right away, get her... try to get her advanced fire magic as quickly as possible by going for these chests. Then, okay, so we already have advanced fire magic. Then you can go for the churchyard here for some additional experience. And then after that, you would start farming like either the picket or these two hives, whatever it makes sense, and figure out how to do it in the most efficient and quickest way possible with Luna, and then farm everything else on side heroes. And after that, just send Luna out for the break. And, obviously, if there's a cons like this, then you would probably want to farm that. So also focus on getting spell power and knowledge for Luna so that she can do the break on her firewall. In case that's not possible, well, this map looks pretty good in terms of pickets. You can probably even do the break here on just farming, after farming the pickets and doing using mass slow on the unicorns. All right, so now let's talk about the tower strategy and what kind of a map you would want to have. So with tower, what I would say is that I would probably pick an artifact as the starting bonus, although gold is also viable because, like I said, you will need a good amount of gold. Now, with tower, I would say that you're going to want to try to get your opponent to use all of his restarts. And that would be either if you're red tower, then try to potentially bait your opponents. Obviously it's, whether you want to bait or not is up to you. I didn't tell you to do this. Like, this is something that you got to do at your own risk. But if you say plus as tower, like if the opponent is at minus 7k, for example, then there's probably a good chance that he's not going to have the best start and he's going to be forced to take his restart. And obviously, if you see a map that's kind of okay-ish, you're not super happy with it, but maybe it's playable. And especially if it's a map that could be playable, if you find something better on turn 2, you can definitely go for a bait on your opponent, and especially if he already used one of his restarts. Now, if you're blue, then it's easy. You get the choice. You wait for your opponent to actually say plus or whether he restarts or not, and then you get your choice. So basically, you can just cherry pick the best map or the map that you really like. And let's just talk about what that is going to look like. So as far as tower strategy, you are going to be trying to catch up in tempo. So we're going to talk about the standard Solmir pick. The Fafnir pick I wanted to kind of just mention, but I haven't really utilized it, so I can't really vouch for it. I usually play Solmir. And something like this, for example, a close break. The break is Hydras. It's not too bad. And what you're going to be wanting to do is you're going to be wanting to try to out-tempo your opponent. And Tower can do that. Tower can definitely give Conflux a run for its money if you roll a decent amount of genies and you, or some combination of genies and pickets, or genies and hives for wyvern, and a favorable break that you can do, that's not too bad. Like Hydras is a really good break, especially if you get Maslow. So a map like this, right off the bat, it's looking pretty damn good. We have a Harpy Hag's lamp here. We could do it with Solmir with his Chain Lightning. Maybe get him a little bit more spell power first. We can do the Dendroid Guards lamp here, probably after getting the ammo cart and, utilizing some proper kiting with these guys. And then after that, we see a decent amount of pickets. We see a picket over here. We see 2 pickets over here that are relatively close to the road. We see additional spell power for Solmir. We see a genie dwelling, golems that we can get over here. Picket over here, but this one is probably not chainable, just too far into snow. But let's say we have these 2 lamps, right? And we have 3 pickets, right? This is already something that can be enough to do the break. Assuming that we can get mass slow against the break. And let me just show you this. So let's see if we do this one, 73. So that may have been a little bit tough. But 6 genies over here. And another 5 genies here. So that already is, and especially if you take the Altar of Thought over here, or not Altar of Thought, sorry, the, what's that called? Altar of Wishes, right? And also upgrade the genies in your town. So then you already have 17 genies, right? Which is enough to start doing pickets. So this would be enough to start doing pickets. And let's just see what we can get from them. So a big one over here, oops. Losing a Cyclops, there's one more lamp here, by the way, that would have been okay. All right, and another decent sized picket. So with that, with 21 Klops buffed by genies, and, you know, assuming that we find somebody with Earth Magic, let's try to see if we can get that on Solmir or not. Fire Magic, not quite. There we go. So we got the Earth Magic on Solmir, and like this, feasibly, if this does go down that way, if you actually roll Earth Magic and level it relatively quickly, you can do this Hydra's Break, maybe even 115. So by farming those lamps, by getting the genies and farming the pickets, you can do some of them with Solmir, and then, you know, maybe even send Solmir for that one, because we have the Evil Eyes 1599, so maybe using Solmir's Chain Lightning for that one would have been good. And then farm the rest with side heroes. So no Expert Earth. All right. So, and if we got Expert Earth like this, and I'm just gonna really quickly demonstrate fighting those Wyvern just to show you guys that it is relatively easy. Okay, there's the slow. And the only other thing that would be good to have against the break is an anti-morale artifact, but we don't really see any of those here. So let's just attempt to do this without and terrain here helps a lot too. So see, a stack like this, 21 Klops buffed by genies, I mean, anything buffed by genies can just really become really powerful really quickly. So just like that, no losses at all. Yeah, there's the morale. Easy. So 31 Hydras, right, with an upgraded stack, and it's that easy with only 21 Klops buffed by genies. So I would say that this is kind of what you want to go for with Tower. Find a map, Tower against Conflux, and in a lot of other matchups as well, but find a map where you can have really good tempo by farming genies and then farming, you know, some combination of lamps and other objects like pickets, conces, or hives, so that you can buff the whatever power stack you have by genies. And when you get a favorable break like this, it becomes really, really easy, especially when you have something like mass slow. Or you can just have, if you roll a lot of lamps, then you can just have genies themselves as a power stack buffing themselves. And I was able to do a Naga's break. I think I'm not even sure if I had slow or not, but I was able to do it on just like 25 genies, I think. And it was relatively easy, and I did it on 115. So overall, that's kind of what you want to look for with tower, I would say, in most cases in this matchup, right? But just for the sake of argument, let's have a quick look at a Fafnir start. And I just want to show you guys what I would prefer as if I did start Fafnir. So I would say that with Fafnir, it would not be a super high tempo game. However, you would be able to go for Titans. And something like this would not be too bad. I would probably want, so really what you would want is Cloud Temples and Utopias. And you would want to try to build giants in your town before week 2, and then try to take the Cloud Temples before week 2 as well, and then take the Utopias, and then try to build Titans, right? So in this case, for example, we do have 2 Cloud Temples, which is decent already. 3 would have been better, of course. And we do have 1 Utopia. Maybe not enough, especially if it's small. This Utopia may not be enough. But I would say, well, it is a size 3, so not bad, right? And it's actually pretty decent, right? We got wings and we got a Spellbinder's hat. So with some casting stats, we would be relatively strong, and especially since we're going to have interference as well. That is going to allow us to, at least put up a fight in the final fight. So I would say that for a Fafnir start, and, for other heroes, this could be viable as well. I would lean more towards the high tempo games and trying to pick a high tempo, but as a last resort, or, if you want to try to bottom game, if you like Titans or something like that, you can try to go for this. You can try to go for the Cloud Temples and maybe a Fafnir start, with that interference, with a focus on kind of more of a mid to late game. So, all right, guys. Well, on that note, I am going to end this video. So that's everything that I wanted to discuss in this matchup. I hope that you guys found this video interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys soon. As always, feel free to check out my Twitch stream, link in the description below. Peace out.